say this prayer. O Allah, we beseech your help and ask for your mercy. For we believe in you and trust in you. We are helpers in your cause with your apostle. So please grant us success. I say like Jesus, I can of myself do nothing. I can't be before you of myself, because I am insignificant in the equation for the liberation of a suffering people. If any of us are willing to serve, then God will use us as an instrument for the liberation of a suffering people. I met a wonderful, beautiful pastor on one of my visits to Tuskegee. He's an elder pastor. And after we finished our discussions and dialogue, he said, brothers, God is concerned for his people. God feels the hurt and the pain of his people. And because God is concerned and God knows and God sees the hurt, feels the hurt, hears the cry of his people, then God always answers the people by raising and bringing up from the people one that will speak to the people and give to the people much needed guidance and direction. And we are a community that are in need of guidance. The greatest gift after life is the gift of guidance. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, with the help of Allah, I bring you this message from our beloved minister, Minister Farrakhan. First, let's look back 18 years ago. Almighty God, Allah, through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, called black men from around this country to present themselves before their families, communities, the nation, and the world. We demonstrated 18 years ago our willingness to atone for our failures and to be the kind of men that God intended for us to be, the kind of men that our women and families would be proud of. And on that day, nearly 2 million black men, in the spirit of atonement, asked God to forgive us. It was the first time black folks went to D.C. and then asked their former slave masters for anything. It was the first time that we went to the Capitol. And we did not make a demand on government, but we made a demand on ourselves. Now, by making a demand on ourselves and accepting the responsibility to make the change needed for ourselves, God blessed that day, and it was a day such that the world has never seen before. We stood together. Do you remember, brothers? We stood together, shoulder to shoulder, like soldiers in ranks. We came together as leaders, as organizations and churches and activists from all groups. We came as Bloods and Crips. We came as disciples and Stones. We came as Baptists and Methodists. We came as Hebrew and Muslim. We came as Alpha and Omegas. We came as Deltas. But on that day, all all of the labels were peeled off of us, and we saw our nakedness in the nature in which God had created us. That day, the world saw what the scriptures say. We can tell that they have passed from death into life because they love the brotherhood. We went to D.C. and the call was bigger than all of us, and it allowed us to focus on something bigger than ourselves, bigger than our organizations, bigger than our agendas. We were focusing 18 years ago on the salvation of the black male, focusing on restoring the black man, because at that time, forces in this country were moving to extinguish us entirely. And the minister exposed the plan of the enemy and went across this country organizing and mobilizing black men in men-only meetings and stop the killing tours. All of that led to the Million Man March, and we gave the world a vastly different picture of the black male. The world didn't see us as criminals that day. They didn't see us as thugs that day. They didn't see us as gangbangers that day. They saw us as men in the image and reflection of God. How effective was the spirit of atonement, reconciliation, and our accepting responsibility for our failures and accepting responsibility to make a change that would be beneficial to us, to our families, to our community, to our nation. That's what made the Million Man March so effective all over the world. That day was produced from God through a man who loves his people and wants to see his people free, wants to see his people rise above ignorance, rise above the condition that the world has created and placed us in. How can looking back on that day and reflecting on the beauty of that day help us today and help us to move forward? How can looking back on the spirit of atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility help us, dear brothers and sisters, to accept the burden of responsibility to make the change that we need to bring benefit to our families and community and nation? These three great principles, atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility, these three words and principles, if acted upon, if we built upon these principles, we could create that kind of peace, tranquility, love in our communities throughout this country that we saw 18 years ago at the Million Man March. It would create a spirit of love and unity that is so basic and necessary for the type of progress that could, would, and must be made if only we atone and reconcile. First in our families, and then in our communities, and then accept the responsibility to make the change that we hope others would make for us. But now we recognize in our worsening condition that we must be the change that we are hoping and looking for. So why are we here in Tuskegee? Why did the minister choose this humble, blessed, beloved city of Tuskegee that gave us in America the brave and courageous Tuskegee Airmen? That's right. That secured America a victory in World War II, that allowed America to become stronger as a nation and even wealthier.